So one of the best things about having a fuel injection on a Grand Wagoneer in the wintertime is this right here. Let the fuel pump prime for a second. And it starts right up. This car's been sitting for about a day or so. It's been in the teens at night, and it starts right up every time. Sometimes it cranks a little bit longer, but yeah, you're not pumping the gas and hoping that it'll start after cranking for 20 seconds and wearing out your starter. But yeah, that's the best thing so far. And as I talked about in other videos, I don't have the gas smell anymore, and we'll get into that a little bit further in this video. Hey guys, it's been a little while since I made a Grand Wagoneer video, so I figured I had made some videos about certain issues with Grand Wagoneers, but I thought I'd go ahead and make a video about this particular Grand Wagoneer. It's a 1987. It spent most of its life in Arkansas, Oklahoma area. I actually purchased it about 4 years ago on December 7th in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And there's a reason why that I'll tell you later. Why I did that, but let's just quickly go over what's going on here in the engine compartment. So since I've had it, it had about 149,000 miles on it when I purchased it, and it's got about 154, so about 5,000 miles in three and a half, 4 years. So I pretty much just drive this on the weekends, short trips. I get on the highway for maybe an hour or so, but that's about it. It has a newer battery. We put the Holley Sniper 2300 on there. There's videos about that, probably about roughly 8 months ago now. It's been running very well, and he had one small little hiccup, but it wasn't anything to do with the Sniper. I had replaced the original radiator, and at the same time the water pump was leaking, so I went ahead and replaced that along with the thermostat and the upper radiator hose. That was all replaced a little over a year and a half ago. And then the power steering pump had the pulley was red, it was making noise, and it actually would leak fluid where you'd have to fill it up every weekend pretty much. It'd leak about halfway down, and so we went ahead and replaced that. Luckily my brother works for a machine shop and was able to take the pulley on and off, but I went ahead and replaced that myself. Did the spark plugs, but the spark plug wires are the original, the cap's still on there. Not original, but original from when I purchased it. I still have the same cap and rotor and everything. Just cleaned it out, sanded it down a little bit, sprayed some WD-40 in there. But like I said, there's other videos on the Sniper if you want to check those out. That's pretty much what I did under the engine compartment. Still sporting a little holiday cheer on here. So this car, the paint it's silver, but it's been faded. It's faded pretty bad. It's no longer, I mean, it probably could buff out, but it also has hail damage on the hood. You can't really see it, but here's a pretty good little dent right here. It's got hail damage on top, and I think on one of the doors right here, yeah, there's some dents right here. The decal is a little bit worn, but it still presents pretty well. I went ahead and put some older AMC emblems on the side since it still has the 360 in it. No issues with that. And I'll tell the story about how I bought it in here in a minute, but I went ahead and tinted the windows myself. Just bought some at the local auto parts store. Since it was an older vehicle, I wasn't that concerned about it. I never tinted windows before. It wasn't that big of a deal. The hardest part was the back window. It's down right now, but it works. I also since I fuel injected it, I went ahead and found a fuel injection emblem and another AMC V8 emblem. The fuel injection's off a Corvette, although I can't remember what year. I just basically painted them to match. They're both red, white, and blue, but the reds and the blues were different colors. Another video, I replaced the taillights with LED lights, light bulbs, not the actual lights themselves, which I think you can buy a kit for that, but they're just the standard LED 1157s and 1156s, I think. It looks like it had been hit in the rear end at one time. There's a slight little warp in the quarter here, a little bit of rust. The reason I bought this one is because it had very minimal rust. The frame was not rusted, is what the issues are with these. It did have some rust down here in the quarter, which I've already, in the rocker panel, which I've already fixed. It basically now show a picture of that, but it basically, the reason it rusted is because it had a wasp nest, several wasp nests in there, and one of the weep holes were clogged with some dust. and so it retained moisture, so it rusted there. There was some wear on the back here as far as the decal was concerned, so we just went ahead and faux stained that. It's not the exact same color, but it looks presentable going down the road. Again, a little bit of body damage down here from when it must have been rear-ended at one time. There is some rust here, which is very common. I think it's probably because of a few different things. It's probably because the exhaust is back here and a lot of moisture gets there, but then obviously that tire kicks some stuff up there. But you know, it's not rusted on the other side, so probably has something to do with the exhaust. But we'll take care of that another time. The interior was pretty good. It wasn't all ripped up or anything. It's dirty right now, but the seat is now just starting to have some small rips in it. The driver's seat at 154,000 miles. It's Cordovan interior. I replaced the center console with I want to say a 97 Roadmaster, Buick Roadmaster center console, and I attempted to stain it, but it's lighter color. I could need to stain it again. But yeah, that's pretty much, I have some stickers on there. The four-wheel drive works. Everything worked except, let's see, the rear window defroster does not work. And when I took the access panel off the back to lubricate everything, because I mentioned in other videos that the handle was really hard to drop the tailgate. You really had to squeeze it with some gorilla arms to get it to work. Once I lubricated everything, all that worked, and the window went up and down twice as fast. But I noticed the wire was disconnected to the defroster, and I didn't want to mess with that because I didn't want to cause any issues. So maybe I'll look into that someday. It's really not a big deal. So yeah, that's pretty much it, and then I'll go ahead and give the story about how and where I bought this. So here's the story of my 1987 Grand Wagoneer. I was looking for a Wagoneer approximately three and a half years ago, for about a year and a half. Just you know, looking at Facebook, Craigslist, eBay, everywhere I could, and most of them were kind of out of my price range if they were a presentable running, driving Grand Wagoneer. Now this one I finally found in Fort Smith, Arkansas, which is about 6.5 hour drive away on the highway from where I'm at. And it was running, driving, and they said that the guy sent me some paperwork of how it had about $8,000 worth of work done approximately 10 years ago. And the story behind it was the guy who purchased it, as it was relayed to me, he purchased things like this, hot rods, things like that, bought them and then got them fixed up and then never drove them. And that's supposedly what happened. The time that he had it over the 10 years, it had 2,000 miles put on it. So I guess that could have been true. So the things that were done to it, it had a rebuilt engine, a rebuilt transmission, the rear end and the transfer case seals had been replaced. It had brand new tires on it. It had shocks, it had some brake work done to it. Spark plugs, all sorts of things done to it at that time. And like I said, it was running and driving, but the tires, although they were 10 years old, had been sitting outside, and they were totally dry rotted, even though the tread was full tread on them. They still had the little tabs on them, but they were totally cracked and dry rotted severely. They never would have made it the 6.5 hour drive home on the highway. So after I purchased it, the first thing I did was went to a well-known tire place and got tires replaced and an oil change, because I knew I was going to be driving it. So one thing I did, the first mistake I made was the very first day I owned it, is I put heavy-duty truck tires on here. They're highway tread, but they're the higher ply tires. I can't remember which one it is, but they're not like passenger style tires, and they're not even light truck tires. So the highway tread is good. They're smooth on the highway, but it makes the Wagoneer ride somewhat rough. Now, maybe your Wagoneer rides rough too, but I had driven an older one from the 70s that had some BFG radials on it, and it rode really smooth on the road. This one, it feels like a Jeep over every bump. So you have to run pretty much 30 pounds of pressure in the tires to have it a smooth ride, which is fine. There's no issues with that. So that was the first mistake I made. And so, yeah, we drove it home. As I was driving home, it was on the highway. So the story goes, we basically left at about 1:30 in the morning because a friend of mine, we drove his truck down there, and then I purchased the vehicle and drove it back. 1:30 in the morning, he was out doing some things, playing pool and stuff, and so that's when we had to leave. He slept most of the way there, drove straight on through, got there, I think it was around 7:30 or whatever, 7:30, 8 o'clock or whatever, and the place where we purchased it from wasn't open yet, so we went and had some great breakfast at a local place in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And then so went and purchased the vehicle, as I said, got the tires put on, the oil changed, and headed back that evening. And on the way back, everything was fine. It was driving on the highway. It was kind of struggling, 65 miles an hour. I could tell it was like it was just losing power, you know. And I'll tell you why in a minute. I've actually had that in another video. So if you want to watch some of the Wagoneers for Dummy videos. So driving back, every once in a while I'd hit a bump and all the power would go away for a split second and then come back on. But it kept running. And it kept doing that, and then one time it would maybe do it for a couple seconds and then quit running. Well, finally it died and it wouldn't start back up. So we pulled over on the side of the highway, you know, it's at night and everything, cars flying by, you know, wiggled the battery cables and some of the wires, and it started back up. So we drove it again. And finally it, around Cuba, Missouri, I think it was, about a mile from the exit, it died while I was on the highway going 70, 65 miles an hour. And I kept trying to start it, not realizing that while you're doing that, gas is still pumping in the exhaust. So when I fired it back up, it fired back up before we got to the exit, and it immediately blew the muffler, blew it up. So then now we sound like a stock car on the highway, and we get off the exit, go to the O'Reilly's. We're finally in some light where we can see some things, and at first I thought it was maybe the starter solenoid because it was dead, it wouldn't do anything, and possibly that they had one. But in the meantime, before we got it on there, we realized that one of the wires, the main wire obviously that keeps the car running, going to the solenoid, you could tell somebody had spliced wires and everything in that general area. And the eyelet that went on one of the posts, the wire was in the eyelet, but nobody had clamped it down, so the wire just moved back and forth. So clamped that down, no issues. Drove it the rest of the way home, another couple, 2.5 hours or whatever home, 2 hours, and no issues. So the next day after I purchased it, after already doing tires and oil change, went ahead and got a new muffler. So that was the first things that I did to it. I got it at a good enough price where I wasn't concerned about it, because I couldn't afford, you know, at that time when I purchased it, the nicer ones that were not fully restored, but maybe had a paint job or something like that on them, were going for anywhere between, like, say $15,000 and $25,000, you know, with higher mileage on them. You know, obviously now they're a lot more expensive than that. So this one was, I purchased it for $5,000, running, driving, everything working, not a rust bucket. And I feel I did a good job on that. Now a lot of people would say, oh, that's terrible, but some people will say that's great. I really don't care. You know, in the Midwest, trying to find one of these for any amount of money that isn't either been totally restored or just totally rusted out. I looked at several of them here in the Midwest, and the frames in the areas where they rust out were totally missing. So this one was perfect. So some of the windows worked, some of them didn't, but a lot of that was just some tightening up and some lubrication and everything. I did have to change some tracks in a couple windows. Well, one window I changed one of the flex tracks in it. And I'm waiting on nowadays, before you could order it and get it relatively quickly, now it's back ordered. So I'm waiting on a flex track for one of the rear passenger windows. And so we got it home, and then over the time, you know, just like any older car, if it's been sitting for a long time, it's going to have issues. I think the rear wheel cylinders were leaking, took care of that. As I said earlier in the video, the power steering pump was leaking. Again, the seals go bad. I took care of that. And one thing you can tell if your power steering pump is making noise, but even if it isn't, if the pulley is like a reddish color and the paint is flaked off of the reservoir and it's got that red color on it, that's not rust, it's from heat, and you know those things have issues. So you might as well consider you're gonna have to replace those, which this one did have that on it. Like I said, it was leaking and everything anyway, so we went and replaced that. The water pump started leaking over time. Again, if a car's sitting for a long time, that's going to happen. You realize that. But instead of putting the money up front, you could just do that a little bit at a time as you're driving it. So again, the water pump, the radiator, upper radiator hose, spark plugs, those are normal things that get replaced. Fuel, and then I did the Holley 2300, and I'm glad I did that because gas mileage is better. It's got a lot more power. And then, and to address the power issue when I was driving it home, basically the air filter, if you look at one of the older vehicles, older videos, the air filter has some doors in it. The air filter housing has some vacuum actuated doors in it, and there was no vacuum going to those doors, so one of them was closed. So it was basically like the air filter housing was closed off, so it was just dying for air. So that was the reason why it couldn't do anything on the highway. And now, you give it gas and it goes, no problem. Getting on and off ramps, the power is there. So, which before, the reason I did the sniper was, fuel injection, was when I got the vehicle, the power valve was bad. So when you were going up a hill or something like that, it would kind of smoke, the black smoke, and not have power. So after reading on the forums and watching videos, the power valve was bad. I had the carburetor rebuilt, and the guy is actually a well-known carburetor company here in the St. Louis area. He tells me when I pick it up, oh, the choke was backwards. It wasn't working right. And I said, okay. And so I get it, and no issues. The wire is loose or whatever because he had to turn the choke upside down, so the wire is now short or whatever that connects to the wire. And I was driving it one day, and all of a sudden it loses power. Like I can't go over 50 miles an hour on the highway. Well, I don't know if this is correct or not. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But now the power wire held the choke open. Why? If I'm pretty sure the choke fails open, not closed. So when the wire came off, the choke closed instead of being open. So I think the wire is supposed to close the choke when it's cold, but I'm not sure. Maybe put it in the comments. I don't know, and I don't care because I'd never heard of that before, and it happened. So the guy obviously didn't know what he was doing. And plus, gas in the oil, smells like gas driving it down the road. No matter how lean I made it so lean where it wouldn't even run. It still did the same thing. So then I started thinking, well, the carburetor is brand new, rebuilt. Well, what's going on? So maybe the fuel pump. The fuel pump was still a little shiny and didn't look that old, but again, it had been sitting for a long time. A lot of times those seals go bad. So maybe it's squirting oil in there. So I changed the fuel pump. No, it's still doing it. So I was changing the oil every 2-3 weeks. I know that's excessive, but it was really putting gas in the oil, and I didn't want to wash the bearings, so I knew I was going to have to do something about it. And I know the Valvoline people were probably concerned about me, but anyway. So I put Sniper on there. That all immediately went away. Instant power when giving it the throttle. No more gas smell. Cranks right up when you're starting it. It may take a couple seconds, but it's not the 10-second, 20-second cranking that a lot of these have. So yeah, that was all taken care of. What else? So the complaints I have about, it's an old car. It's going to have all those issues, so I'm not really concerned about that. But the complaints I would rather not have. It's kind of noisy on the highway, and I don't mean motor noise. I mean wind noise. I've even replaced some of the seals, and it's still kind of noisy. But I haven't replaced all the window welts and all that stuff, so that's probably part of it too. And I haven't added any sound deadener in it, so. Maybe that's in the future. I don't know. I could really use some heated seats in the winter time. I'm getting older and I like heated seats, but that's something that could be put on there. Like I said, the skins are starting to have some little tears in them now, so maybe I'll replace them with some other seat. If you guys have an idea of like some other Jeep seat or something that would bolt in pretty good, or I'm not afraid of modifying anything, but would look pretty decent in here, just let me know. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, I think that's pretty much it. The future plans there aren't really any future plans for the Wagoneer. It's really just drive it on the weekends and enjoy it. One thing, if you haven't purchased a Wagoneer yet, or if you do, if you do have one, that, everywhere you go, someone has some comment to say about it. And what's going through my mind, you know, they really like it usually, but they always tell me about how their grandpa or their parents had one and all that stuff. And I start thinking, well, your grandpa must have had a good job or had some money to buy one of these brand new, because they weren't cheap. I think I can't remember what it was, but I had a parts car one that I bought a long time ago that I got the grill out of right before I bought this one. And then I sold it, but I think it was like $30,000 was the sticker price, if I remember right, back in 1990. So that was a pretty expensive car back in 1990. So yeah, hope you guys enjoy this video. If you want to see some other videos, just let me know, and don't forget to subscribe and like. Thanks.